just in case you know the story of Hollow Knight but not the exact lore, the Pale King was the king of Hallownest, and he tried to fight off the Radiance by essentially sacrificing a ton of his own kids. When I say a ton, I mean a ton. Like, this entire section of the map is made of nothing but the bodies of his kids. So as expected, people don't really have the highest opinion of this guy. He even has a spot on the villains wiki, and some people have even argued that the Radiance was the victim in this situation and the Pale King was just an egotistical asshole. But when I took a closer look at what he did, why he did it, he actually seems like a pretty good guy. So firstly, what did he do? Well, before he came to Hallownest, most of the bugs were mindless and didn't have higher dot. There were exceptions, like the mantises, the slugs, this section with sentient mushrooms, but after the Pale King arrived, he gave most of the bugs the ability to think. There is a common misconception here that's used against the Pale King, and while he gave the bugs higher dot, he didn't brainwash them into worshipping him. All he did was give them the ability to think, and the Pale King had to convince them of his worth himself. But convincing the bugs wouldn't have been so hard anyways. He's the one who gave you the ability to think, he's the one who brought higher society, and that's a really good thing. He gave a bunch of mindless bugs that were basically just zombies the ability to think. And while I guess you can say that he did this to feed his own ego, or that he wanted their belief to feel his own power, that to me seems more like a mutually beneficial relationship than the Pale King evilly using all these random bugs for his own gain. And I don't think that he did this just for his own ego, but because he genuinely wanted these bugs to have higher dot. After all, he did die trying to preserve this. And if it was all for personal gain, then dying just kinda makes it pointless. Unless you were trying to do it for a different reason, which in this case I think is preserving the higher dot in these bugs. Another point used against the Pale King is that he was a conqueror that usurped land from natives, sort of like England. Before I go really into detail about this, we should look at the map. So originally, Queen's Garden was probably a part of Greenpath. Kingdom's Edge, Ancient Basin, the Abyss, and the Hive probably were around the same. Crystal Peak, the Resting Grounds, City of Tears, Rural Waterways, and the Forgotten Crossroads, which in-game is all part of Hallownest, was probably part of the Moth tribe, where the Radiance ruled. Or in the case of the Rural Waterways or the City of Tears, a part of it was also probably part of the Fungal Wastes. Fungal Wastes and Deep Mist also probably remained the same because the game made it a point to say that Hallownest couldn't extend that far. So if originally this map was so different and now so much of it is part of Hallownest, does that mean that the Pale King violently took over all this land from native populations? I don't think so. Going by this Mushroom's dialogue, as well as the Last Mouse dialogue, it's most likely that these populations willingly gave their land to the Pale King. In fact, the Moth even goes as far as to say that the Pale King wasn't at fault, and that their tribe was the one responsible for angering the Radiance. We don't see much about Greenpath except this sign, but I'm willing to bet that residents of Greenpath were probably divided in whether to support the Pale King and the White Lady or to support Oon, leading to half of it being now the Pale King's territory and half of it being just Greenpath. So the Pale King did not violently seize territory, but rather just accepted it from people who were willing to give it. And while you could argue that the Pale King was being greedy by accepting all this territory, I'm not here to say that he was perfect. Just compare this to the Radiance's infection. It goes everywhere, into the Ancient Basin, into Greenpath, going and interfering with other territories. Compare that to the Pale King, who let the Mantises stay alone, who left Oon a part of his territory, and basically didn't take anything from anyone who wasn't willing to give it. And again, while the infection was purely just for the Radiance's gain, the Pale King's rule was mutually beneficial, and he brought better living standards and intelligence to the bugs while he got more power. Now, this argument can go even further, and people say that the reason the infection is so bad is because the Radiance was angered by the Pale King. And originally, the Radiance's rule wasn't nearly as cruel. But that's not directly Pale King's fault. After all, it's not like he intentionally seized power, but rather the Moths willingly gave their belief to the Pale King, instead of the Radiance. Ideally, though, it would have been better for him to more fairly distribute the land and not take so much for himself. But again, while the Pale King wasn't perfect, he's still miles better than the Radiance, and definitely not a villain. And now to address the elephant in the room, or should I say, the hole in the ground. How about his motto, no cost too great, and all the cruel sacrifices he made? Committing essentially mass infanticide is by far the most incriminating thing against the Pale King, and I'm gonna say right now that nothing justifies it. But we should take a look at everything the Pale King sacrifices to try and stop the infection, and also what he doesn't sacrifice. He sacrifices a ton of his own children, he has some freaky bug sex with a spider, and he dies. Now, a common trend I noticed about all these sacrifices is that all of them were personal sacrifices. Despite what the memes say, it's not like the Pale King was just mindlessly shoving kids into the abyss. He definitely didn't want to do this, judging by how both he and the White Lady referred to it as a great shame. Also consider that he did end up showing affection and love to one of his kids, so it was probably hard for him to sacrifice his own children, but he did it anyways for the bugs of Hallownest. Now the second thing he does, he makes a deal with Hera where he'd give her a child in exchange for her becoming a dreamer. This also gets memed a lot, but I'm pretty sure the Pale King didn't want to cheat on his wife. If you walk into the White Lady's room with the King Soul, you can see how affectionate she still is after all this time towards the Pale King. So judging by that, I'd say that they definitely had a loving relationship. So willingly and purposefully cheating on her probably wasn't an easy thing to do, but he did it anyways for the bugs of Hallownest. Also, as a little extra side note about this point, I feel that by creating offspring with Hera, who is a lower being and not a god, and yielding to her demands, he's also sacrificing his own integrity as a higher being. And of course, in the process of all this, he dies, and that's the ultimate sacrifice. Even though he knew he wouldn't get to live to see it, he still wanted the bugs of Hallownest to thrive. And on that note, I want to talk about what he doesn't sacrifice. So there's a reason why I started the video with Soul Master, and this reason is actually what inspired me to make this video. There's another misconception about the Pale King, and that's that he condoned all these atrocities that Soul Master committed, where he sacrificed and tortured a bunch of innocent bugs. Like, oh look, there's another hole that's made of nothing but bodies. No wonder people thought it was the Pale King's work. But when you look through Dreamnail dialogue, it's revealed that the Pale King was actually completely against all these atrocities and experiments. In fact, I would say that most of these bodies probably came after the Pale King died and the Soul Master had free reign to do whatever he wanted. And I guess while you could say that the Pale King stopped the Soul Master because the Pale King saw that the Soul Master was under the influence of the Radiance, I think it goes more than just that, and that the Pale King didn't want to sacrifice innocent bugs. And this is why I think of him as a good person. He was willing to sacrifice his own children, his own integrity, his own relationship with his wife, his own life, but not the people. He's far from perfect, but he had good intentions, and he definitely doesn't deserve to be categorized as a villain. And yeah, that sums up why I think he's a pretty good guy. Also, as a little bonus note, he did succeed in being the Radiance. It took a while, and he did die, and his original plan did fail. But a byproduct of his failed plan is the player character, and the player character is the one that defeats the Radiance and ends this terrible pandemic. So in the end, he did technically succeed. And yeah, that's it for this video. I hope I convinced you, and if you disagree with me, I will be active in the comment section. And also, please enjoy this meme I made.
お前なんで来たの？
なんとなく。
早くこの場を離れようぜ。しばらく駆け回るぞあいつら。
お前知ってる？
何をですか？
俺の正体。ネットとか雑誌とか見てねえの？
そんなの知ってましたよ。最初から。僕の師匠の正体は。いいやつだ。
Alright, that meme was way better in my head, but by the time I realized I was already in too deep. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed the video. I also want to tell you guys to check out this video by Kandy Songbird. It's really good, and if you're a fan of the HoloNet lore at all, which I'm sure you are if you got to this point, you should definitely check it out. It made finding footage for this video so much easier, and it depicts a lot of the unsaid lore in the game. And yeah, that's it. Hope you guys enjoyed.